morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Kano Tryharding Modern. Today, we will be playing Tron again, and I kept the same list. I decided to cut the surgical extractions, simply because we didn't run into any scenarios where we actually could cast it and it was good. There were a couple of times it let us peek at our opponent's hand, I think, in the last couple of videos, where like maybe we got a little bit more information. But actually, whatever deck that this was teched against with those in that slot, we're not running up against. Now, it was really good versus, like, I think Hammer Time. It's what bought us a bunch of time because we surgicaled something important, I'm pretty sure. But that's the only time that that's happened. And so I'm wondering if Abundant Harvest is just better to be running in that slot. So I dropped 2 Surgical Extraction, added 2 Abundant Harvest, and I dropped an All Is Dust for an Abundant Harvest. And the reasoning behind that is I think All Is Dust is fine as a board wipe. I do not like having 2, even though it's good. Most of the time, if we can cast All Is Dust, we can just cast Ugin, and Ugin is better because it exiles. Basically, that's the only reason. Because so many decks are using the graveyard right now, I think the exile is actually more important than being able to board wipe on turn 3. And I might end up dropping that All Is Dust for an Oblivion Stone, simply because of the amount of like land hate we ran into last time. But it's possible that one Abundant Harvest should actually be the 4th Warping Whale. We'll see. I suspect the more of these cards I run, the worse they get when you name non-land, because they can run into each other, and we may not have multiple green sources unless we have a Yavimaya out, because we're only running 17 lands and 2 basics. But the intent with these is to name land, because we're running 17 land. And the odds of hitting a Tron land are very high. So, other than that, I made no changes, so I'll see you guys in round 1. Alright, we're on the draw. For some reason, we have not been getting the play. I think out of the last 2 leagues, we've maybe been on the play 3 times. This hand technically does work. It's a little suspect. I think we need to mulligan that. This hand is quite a bit worse because it has no Tron lands. Is my opponent mulliganing? They also mulliganed. Pretty much regardless of whether they keep or don't, we're going to mulligan to 5. Perfect. So we'll put back Map and Abundant Harvest and just have natural Tron Planeswalkers. Let's go. Opponent leads on Stomping Ground, shocks. Ragavan. We draw Chromatic Sphere, Tron Land Sphere, pass the turn. Well, the good news is, as powerful as Ragavan is versus most decks, because I have never in my life seen Ragavan steal a Thoughtseize or an Inquisition. If Ragavan hits a hand hate spell out of your deck, you lose. Guaranteed. But versus Tron, I think Ragavan is a bit worse, because 90% of the spells in the deck don't matter for this player to cast, and the remainder of the spells they can't cast because the mana cost is too high. Alright, main deck Fulminator. We might be in trouble. We draw a Chromatic Star, so play Power Plant. Cycle Sphere for green, play Star. I mean, if this is just Ragavan backup land destruction, then we're completely boned. That is like the worst case scenario for any deck we could possibly play against. So opponent attacks us for 8. We're going to make us discard with Lightning Skelemental. They get a treasure. So we have to discard Ugin and Wormcoil. There's no other option there. And they exile the Power Plant. Okay. We untap. We draw Ancient Stirrings. Sack Star for green. We get another Power Plant. Ancient Stirrings. Let's try and find a mine. We did not find a mine, so we're going to take Chromatic Star because it's a redraw that potentially lets us cast our other spells. Play Tower, play Star, pass the turn. Yeah, Ragavan accelerating you into a turn 2 Fulminator is probably the worst possible thing as a Tron player you could come up against. I mean, this is pretty close to taking the cake of the worst thing I could actually determine to be the case. I had somebody telling me that Ragavan wasn't that powerful, and I have to say that I very much disagree. And this person jokingly made the comment like, well, you just don't like Ragavan because you didn't open it. And the logic for that is a little bit astounding to me, because that line of logic innately implies that Ragavan is extremely powerful, and the reason that I don't like it is because I don't have it. And they were using it as an argument for why Ragavan is not very powerful, and I'm like, that's not how that works. But the short answer is Ragavan's stupid powerful. And the argument for why another argument that this person made for why it wasn't was because it's easily answered. And that might be the case. And Dragon's Rage Channeler and Monastery Swiftspear and Soulscar Mage might be easier to abuse because of the way that like deck synergies work, right? Because Ragavan in terms of power level is very strong, and the mana advantage that it grants you, if you play it on turn 1 and it happens to go unanswered, you will win the game. I would say maybe 95 times out of 100, you will win the game. And the reason being is because of the mana advantage, not necessarily the card advantage. But the thing is about Ragavan is its average power level is strong, and its average power level might even be lower than Dragon's Rage Channeler, but the power ceiling of Ragavan is basically unlimited, and that's why it's a powerful card. Even if it's inconsistent, if it wins you 30% of the games that you play it on turn 1, and it costs you nothing to put in your deck because it costs a single red, and red is a good color in Modern, you're going to be in trouble. So we're going to bring in Force of Vigor and Wilt, we're bringing in Veil of Summer, and we're going to drop some Abundant Harvests and Kozilek and try it like this. Whoops. I didn't take out all the Abundant Harvests, so I'm playing 61 cards because I decided to take that time to talk. All right, let's go. It's turn 3 Tron. But, like, all of that aside, my bigger problem with Ragavan is the fact that it has no cost. And I mean, like, what I mean by that is there's no deck building restriction. With something like Dragon's Rage Channeler, which I think is too strong, and is a little bit egregiously designed, you have to play a lot of non-creature spells. And is that really a restriction? Not really. Because a lot of decks in Modern already did that. Like, there was Blitz, there was Prowess, there's Burn. And yes, it is playable in Burn, because putting Lava Darts in the grave is fantastic. Opponent plays Collector Oof. That's fine. Let's go get Power Plant. Collector Oof resolves. So we're going to resolve a Wormcoil Engine here, which may or may not be good enough. And I am going to start playing out Spheres and Stars, even though I can't crack them because of the Oof, because I could still need to wish for Ensnaring Bridge, and I need them out of my hand. But, like, Ragavan requires no deck building considerations at all. It has way too much text for a 1-drop. Its power ceiling is absurd, and it's a chase mythic. Like, they just printed a strong card for the sake of printing a strong card. And, yeah, I haven't opened any out of draft, but honestly, if I opened any, like, short of opening 3 in one draft, which would be an insane line of luck, and I would be pretty much guaranteed to win that draft regardless of what I drafted, I would probably just sell it, because it's worth the price of 5 Modern Horizons drafts, or, like, 12 leagues, something like that. And that would offset the cost of running this channel a lot. So, it's not a, well, you have it or you don't, Kano, that's why you don't like it. That much I can guarantee you. But, like, the other point I was trying to make with that is, the reason I dislike it so much is the fact that because that card exists, for the sole reason that that card exists, all his dust is perfect here, something else didn't make the cut. Something else that was cool didn't make the cut. And Wizards, when they first introduced the Mythic Rarity, said that the idea with Mythic Rarity is that they want to print something cool, not necessarily just the best card, right? They didn't want Mythic Rare to be the chase slot, and we all know that it did. It became that over time, and whatnot. But, like, Ragavan is the most blatant one, in my opinion. And I'm sure there are other examples you could point to, and you wouldn't be wrong. But it's in a supplemental product that's difficult to get a hold of and overpriced. It's a card that, if you don't have it, you are automatically less competitive in the Modern format. It's a 1-drop, meaning it can be played in basically anything that wants to go low to the ground. It's quite ridiculous. So we're going to sack a couple of cards here, or a couple of spheres here, just to see if we can hit another Tron land, because if we can, we're going to cast Ulamog and win the game. There it is. Okay. Now, we are definitely not favored for Game 3. And I think that's enough ranting on Ragavan for now. So, I do apologize. I know some people don't enjoy my rants as much, but I wasn't upset by this person bringing this up, because it gave me a reason to kind of formalize, again, the reasons that I don't like the card, the reasons that I think it's too strong, the fact that even if it isn't too strong, it's a design mistake and just shouldn't exist. But, okay. That's 2 mulligans. I guess I've got to keep this. If my opponent's playing as many land destruction spells as we've seen, like if they're just playing a playset of Fulminators and they're getting lucky getting them every game, that's that's whatever. But I suspect they may have Stone Rains or Assassin's Trophies or other cards that we have to worry about. I really doubt they would be playing something like Sowing Salt or the what is it called? Crumble to Dust, I think. The Sowing Salt that's colorless but only costs 1 red from, was it Battle for Zendikar? Although it would be possible, especially if my opponent is like expecting to accelerate with Ragavan. Okay. Yeah, sure. Play Forest. Ancient Stirrings. I guess we'll take a Tron land. So odds are we're going to lose because generally Magus of the Moon and Blood Moon are not too big of a problem to deal with in Modern as you play Tron. The problem here is that my opponent has a ton of additional pressure. Ragavan is giving them any color of mana so they can continue to cast their spells despite the fact they're playing no basics. They do not have to play... Like, the fact that these two cards synergize is so upsetting to me right now. Ragavan has like a 50% chance of giving them a card they can cast because we're like half cantrips, half threats, right? It's a little bit less than 50% because if they hit a land, they can't play a land off of Ragavan. They play Kroxa. Okay. I guess we're discarding Ugin because I don't want to take the damage. The problem with this particular version is our removal is Warping Wail, of course. So if we get mooned, we don't have any wastes. We can't cast Warping Wail. We can't filter into colorless with the chromatic stars and stuff. So it's pretty bad. So like our only hope is somehow getting to 7 mana and then playing like All Is Dust or 8 mana and playing Ugin. Theoretically, like I could play Karn, I could wish for Oblivion Stone, and then I could blow up the world. The problem is that doesn't actually win me the game. Okay. I mean, sure. Like, Warping Wail versus my opponent's deck is actually good. It's just not good versus Magus of the Moon. It's like if I'd been able to exile this or exile this. Actually, if I'd been able to exile this, my opponent would be completely dead in the water. Like if I'd had Warping Wail on turn 2 so I could do it in response to Magus of the Moon, my opponent wouldn't have stood a chance. Because like then they just mooned themselves out of the game, right? Then they have no pressure. That is when Magus of the Moon and Blood Moon is super bad versus Tron. Magus of the Moon is actually better than Blood Moon versus Tron because generally Tron's removal does not hit Magus unless you're playing Dismember, which most people aren't right now. Because of Warping Wail's incredible Warping Wail's incredible like metagame countering properties, like the fact that it answers like land destruction sorceries, it answers time warps, it answers Dragon's Rage Channeler, Pre-Delirium, it answers Ragavan, it answers a ton of threats. Yeah, this is a deck that if I knew I was going to go up against a Tron player and just had all the cards, I would build this deck to beat me. I think that's like maybe a 15 to 85% matchup, like 15% chance of win, 85% chance of loss. So I'm not really that upset that we lost or anything like that. I don't think that was variance. I think we were pretty much predestined to lose without getting excessively lucky. So, all right, well, I'll see you guys in round 2. All right, welcome back to round 2, everybody. And I think this hand is great. We're going to keep. We've got Natural Tron. We have Chromatic Sphere, Star, and Abundant Harvest. So hopefully we can find a non-land threat. Play Chromatic Star, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Plays a Flooded Strand. Passes. We untap and draw an Expedition map. Sack Star for green. Get another star. Play a Sphere. Play a Power Plant. Sack Sphere for green. We get a Karn Liberated. Abundant Harvest. We'll say non-land. We get an All Is Dust and pass the turn. Opponent cracks Flooded Strand for a Raugrin Triome. If they tap out for something, Karn's going to be great here. If they don't, and Karn gets countered, he will obviously be less than great. So play Tower, play Karn, Counterspell. Okay. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play an island. And then they pass. We untap. We draw an Urza's Mine. So play an Urza's Mine. Play an Ugin. I expect this will get counterspelled as well. Probably Archmage Charm. Yep. Okay. We're gonna play Expedition Map because we want to get Ugin Sanctum, or Sanctum of Ugin, so that we can tutor up an Ulamog, basically. If we draw Ulamog, then that's what we're gonna do. Opponent is probably going to field us here, especially if they're holding a counter spell. Prismatic Ending, they're going to take out the map. Alright, so they're going to take us off Tron here. I've not seen a traditional control deck like this in a while, but then again, I also haven't been in the losers bracket. Not until late in the league, anyway. Okay, they take out Power Plant. We'll go get a forest. We untap. We draw another forest. So, play Chromatic Star. Sack Star for green. We draw a Power Plant. Play Avimaya. I'm going to hide the fact that I have Tron for a turn. I don't think it'll make my opponent play differently, but it's possible. They play Castle Ardenvale. They pass, we untap. We draw Kozilek. Play Power Plant. Play Kozilek. Draw a bunch of cards. Okay. Kozilek resolves. They probably have a Wrath. That or they're going to cast a draw spell and try and find one. They could have Path. And there's no reason for them to path immediately if that's the case. Okay, opponent cycles a Shark Typhoon, makes a 3/3. They untap. They play an island. They go to combat. Attack for 3. No blocks. Take 3. They could have like a whole bunch of like Cryptic Tap shenanigans as well. Just like Cryptic Tap, Snap Cryptic. We untap. Okay, they path on our upkeep. We will not use Path's ability. We draw a Karn, Great Creator. So if I play Karn, I can play another Power Plant, and then have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can go get Sundering Titan. Play Karn. If Karn gets countered, we're going to go for Sanctum of Ugin off of Sylvan Scrying. Okay. Opponent is going to Cryptic, counter Bounce Tower. Okay, that's actually fine. We'll go ahead and Sylvan Scrying. I was going to cast All Is Dust, though I think it's a little bit premature. We'll go get Sanctum. Pass the turn. I did it this way specifically so I could leave up Warping Whale. I don't know that that's going to matter, but it can't hurt. Opponent goes to combat, attacks us for 3. Take 3 and go to 14. Opponent passes. We untap. We draw Karn, Liberated. Play Tower. Play Karn. It's probably a Snap Cryptic or Counterspell. That works too. Okay, nothing I can do about that. Pass the turn. I could have waited a turn to play Sanctum to tutor up Ulamog, but we can also do that with All Is Dust. Is opponent making a Soldier? Cycling another Shark Typhoon. Okay. They make a 2/2. They draw a card. They untap. They go to combat. Attack us for 5. Take 5 and go to 9. Then they play a land. We untap. We draw a Power Plant. Play Sanctum. All Is Dust. Sack Sanctum. Get Ulamog. All Is Dust resolves. Pass the turn. Opponent is making a Soldier here. Okay. They untap. They draw. This might seem a little aggressive, but I'm going to get rid of that token. We untap. Draw another Urza's land. Play an Urza's Mine. Cast Ulamog. Take out the Triome and the Castle. Okay. Ulamog resolves after exiling the lands they floated for mana. Opponent might just be cycling Big Shark Typhoon. That's exactly what's happening. Okay. It's a 5/5 shark, so we're dead in 2 turns. They untap. They play a field. They go to combat, attack us for 5. So we need some kind of answer for that shark. Basically, we need a Planeswalker. I mean, even if our opponent fields our tower, we in theory have enough other cards that this is fine. Okay. Yeah, I could still play an Ugin if I drew him. Okay, opponent has Path. We untap. We draw an Ancient Stirrings. Play it. Gotta take Karn Liberated. Rest of the bottom. Play Power Plant. Cast Karn. He resolves. Take out the shark. Pass the turn. We're dead to a lot of stuff. Snapcaster is basically one of them. I'm going to need a worm coil to get out of the danger zone. And that doesn't work if my opponent gets presumably their 4th Shark Typhoon. They're forcing Karn to uptick, so we need a different answer to Snapcaster. We take 2, down to 2. We untap, we draw Ancient Stirrings, cast it. Get a worm coil, rest of the bottom. Down tick Karn. If they have another Snapcaster, if they have another Path, if they have another Shark Typhoon, we're dead. I guess I could have taken Karn Great Creator and gotten down to just 1 card in hand to go get Bridge. But we would lose to Prismatic Ending because we're playing Yavimaya and our opponent has 3 colors of mana currently, in addition to a counterspell. Opponent bounces the Snapcaster and draws a card. That is interesting. Play an Urza's Mine. Play Worm Coil. Well, now they can just Snapcaster Path, but it buys us a single turn. Okay, opponent flashes in Snapcaster, so they're holding a Path, then they just want to kill us immediately. We would need another... This last card in our hand would have to be another Warping Whale in order to survive, I guess. Yep. Okay. Well, they had it. It's not that often in the current metagame you run up against decks playing Field of Ruin. So we're going to bring in Veil of Summer. We're going to drop 2 Abundant Harvests. One moment. We're bringing in the enchantment removal. Probably just going to drop Abundant Harvest here. And I'm going to cut an All Is Dust. I think I'm going to bring in Emrakul. Just to have additional like late game top end, especially that can't be countered. You know, Warping Whale didn't actually hit a lot. It hits some of the creatures, but in weird circumstances. So I'm going to cut 1 Warping Whale. Apologies for the phone call that I received. It was important this time, finally. I feel bad. My roommate backed into my car, and it doesn't look that bad at all, but apparently the damage is way, way worse, because like all of the internals for like my passenger door were like destroyed. Because he bent the body slightly around the distributor bar in the door, and I feel super bad about it because it's just like a bit of bad luck, and it's just like a slight lapse of judgment for a single moment, a mistake I easily could have made, not something I'm upset about at all. But that was me getting that repair scheduled because they Prismatic Ending my map. I'm okay with this. So we untap, we draw Karn Great Creator. Let's play a Forest, Ancient Stirrings. Let's get a Power Plant, rest of the bottom. Play Expedition Map, pass the turn. Yeah, just needed to get the actual repair schedules. Like, I'm glad the insurance, like, it's all handled through insurance. There's been no problems, no speed bumps at all in that process. Like, we're good. Everything's fine. Just like a minor annoyance. But yeah, if you look at my car, it's like the body is actually only dented in a little bit, but like just like all of the internals of the door are completely wrecked. So it requires like a whole new door. And I didn't even think about this, but apparently if that's the case, right, no matter what, if you have to have a body panel replaced, even if they get you a factory part and they have the correct paint for like your specific coloring for your car, right, they have to actually take the body panels off around that body panel and repaint the edges of those to blend the paint all the way across. Otherwise, your car is going to look goofy. And I mean, this is, you know, only if you care about that sort of thing, right? And I drive a Challenger, and I need to get the. Okay, we're gonna go with Karn Great Creator here because I can leave up Veil of Summer for the counterspell. So unless my opponent has like Archmage's Charm plus Force Negation, we're fine. Counterspell. Veil of Summer. Okay, opponent opts. But that's not something that I didn't even thought about when they have to do the repair. And so it's just like there's this huge extra amount of effort that's got to go into fixing my vehicle, which just sucks. So I'm not gonna have my car for a few days, but that's fine. It's not like I need it. I'm not driving that much right now. And like the door opens and shuts just fine. But like the guy, when I took it to the shop, I was like, yeah, I didn't try and roll the window down because I didn't know if there was any damage, and that would be my only way of checking, and of course that could like potentially damage the car. And he's like, I'm really glad you didn't, because then we would have had to get you a new window too. And it sucks extra hard because the guy was like, yeah, so for some weird market reason, used doors for your specific model are actually more than getting a new one that's OEM. And I was like, that's wild. Alright, we untap, we draw, Sylvan Scrying, okay. So let's try forcing our opponent to do something here. Blow up a land, cycle Sphere for green, we get a power plant. That's actually pretty good. Play power plant. Sylvan Scrying. I'm trying to bait my opponent into, like, casting a spell here. I'm going to get a backup tower, and then we'll cycle this star for green, and if we draw another Veil of Summer, this game's over. We get Emrakul. Now I could cast Ugin, but Karn is a much bigger threat. Okay, opponent has a counter spell. Sure. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. So normally their answer to a Karn Great Creator on board would have to be a Prismatic Ending with 4 colors of mana, and generally decks playing Prismatic Ending, unless they're 5 color, only go up to 3 color. It's generally 2 color white decks that splash an opportunistic 3rd color, which we saw with our opponent's Ragavan Triome in Game 1. So they wouldn't be able to Prismatic Ending this, meaning they either have to have Cryptic Bounce or Pithing Needle, and neither of those are good answers to that Karn, especially with how much mana we had. So, okay. Do I want to make any adjustments going into the last game? I don't think so. I think that while Abundant Harvest is probably better on average than Wilt Force of Vigor, even in this matchup, even post-board, the odds of my opponent having something that completely shuts off our strategy that we need those for is so high that I can't not run them. So we are going to keep this. We're going to put a Forest back. I know this hand is like super slow, but I do not like our chances on a mulligan to 5 versus our opponent's deck. Opponent's deck did mulligan to 6. Lead on Urza's Mine. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Did they keep a 1-lander? They fetch and shock a Hallowed Fountain, then play Castle Vantress. We untap. We draw a 2nd tower. So, play tower. Pass the turn. If we can draw a power plant in our next 2 draws, this is a turn for Ulamog. Okay, they just cycle a Shark Typhoon, no token. Opponent does have the field. I'm going to Warping Wail to make a token, because this might encourage my opponent to counter, thinking that maybe I have a backup strategy like playing Karn Great Creator off of 4 mana. It also gives us that out. We draw a Veil of Summer, which is kind of important. So we're going to play Yavimaya, so we have access to that. And I'm not going to attack because I'm going to act like I need the mana. And I kind of do. Okay, opponent fields our tower. Get a forest. That's only really going to matter if we don't draw power plant anytime soon. Okay, opponent plays a Ragavan Triome. We untap. We draw another Urza's Mine. That's not what you want to see. I'm going to start playing redundant Urza's Mines because my opponent doesn't have us under any pressure right now. Which potentially gives us just like a huge mana turn when we play like our next tower, as an example. The only concern with that is if my opponent's playing a version of blue-white control or Jeskai control, whatever this qualifies as, it's probably just blue-white, splashing this for Prismatic Ending once again. As long as they're not playing a version that is playing Surgical Extraction, this play is fine. This play is not fine if they're playing Surgical, because they'll just Surgical Tower first opportunity they get, because we don't have one on board. And then we would be practically screwed. It would not be impossible to win, but it would be very unlikely. Opponent's second main phase. They blow a Prismatic Ending, that's fine. We untap. We draw Expedition Map. Play the map. I will Veil of Summer to protect that. Okay, play tower. Pass the turn. So next turn, we should have the mana to cast Ulamog and hold up Veil of Summer. Okay, let's go get Power Plant now. And if I Veil of Summer this, my opponent does not get to draw a card. And we get to keep that land on board. Meaning that now, even if they do have Surgical, they have to Field of Ruin that Urza's Tower in addition. So opponent plays a Colonnade, then passes. We untap. We draw Ugin. Ugin is a decent follow-up. Play Power Plant. Okay. Play Ulamog, and we're going to take out Colonnade and Castle, because those are the lands that my opponent can use to generate advantage. Them putting Prismatic Ending on 3 does not matter as much. It still matters, of course, but okay. They're going to counterspell Ugin. I did not mean to F6 there. I shouldn't have, because I needed to play out that Chromatic Star, but it's not going to matter that much, I don't think. Opponent plays a Castle Ardenvale. Okay, opponent plays Jace and Brainstorms. As long as they don't have a Ceremonious Rejection, Ugin Ugin can just uptick and kill Jace, and then we're golden. That's the concern right now. So we untap. We draw Force of Vigor, which does not do a whole lot. Players is mine. Play Ugin. I guess they could have Force Negation as well. Force Negation would also be bad. Kill Jace. And because I didn't play out that Chromatic Star, I'm not going to start now. I'm going to leave up Force of Vigor in case my opponent does have a Pithing Needle or a maybe a Stony Silence, anything of that nature. An Oblivion Ring. I don't think anybody plays Oblivion Ring. Not anymore. Okay, opponent plays Teferi. I mean, if they down-tick him, he dies to Ugin, but they may need to down-tick him in order to find some kind of answer. Alright, we untap. We draw our 4th Urza's Mine. Kill Teferi. I was going to say, if they have to Cryptic Bounce, that's pretty bad for them. Play Chromatic Star. Cycle it for green. Play Chromatic Sphere. Play Urza's Mine. Cycle it for green. Sylvan Scrying. We'll go get Sanctum of Ugin. Pass the turn. Alright, so they did not have a Shark Typhoon or a Snapcaster Mage to do damage to Ugin to prevent him from ulting, so they need to be able to bounce him this turn. Archmage's Charm, they're drawing cards. And the game is over. Nice. Veil of Summer, I think, is a critical spell for Tron to be able to beat blue-white control. Traditionally, this wasn't the case because way long ago when we had Eye of Ugin, we had Inevitability. Control at the time couldn't afford to play couldn't afford to play Ghost Quarter because they couldn't afford to go mana negative. They had to answer all of your stuff while still generating mana. Because you could very easily recover from a Ghost Quarter at the time. And then Eye of Ugin just gave you Inevitability because it meant every turn you were going to like start tutoring up some huge threat to play against them. Since the printing of Field of Ruin, the banning of Eye of Ugin, and then like people started playing Sanctum of Ugin when that came out, it was like about even, but I think it's actually gotten worse for us because of Control now just plays so many answers and so many modal spells like Archmage's Charm, Cryptic Command. Control doesn't run out of answers, or they don't run out of counter spells when it comes to like the Control versus Tron matchup. And so I think it's really important that you have Veil of Summer if you expect to run into Control and beat Control at all. You know, things like a fast Ulamog, versions of Control, not playing Field of Ruin and stuff, make it a lot easier, but if like traditional blue-white Control, I think you need Veil to beat. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. Anyway, I'll see you guys in round 3. Alright, we're on the draw for round 3. Yeah, we'll be keeping this. So this is turn 1 map, turn 2 Warping Whale / map activation, turn 3 Tron, turn 4 Ugin. Oh, I do apologize if there are any interruptions in this recording in advance. There is currently an electrical storm going on outside, and it's kind of uncommon for this area, but we really need it. Our atmosphere has been so like contaminated from all the fires and stuff happening in California that it's like unbearable to be outside. And last night it started like just absolutely pouring rain, which is not normal for this area, and it has continued well into today. And I'm very happy because hopefully that means, you know, our atmosphere gets better and a little bit cleaner and doesn't suck for at least a day and whatnot. But if the power goes out, the power goes out, and I don't have a lot of footage recorded right now, so I would have to make do with what I got. Alright, looks like we might be against... I was going to say a Yorion deck, but they didn't reveal Yorion. This could be Flicker, like this could be Soul Herder. And play Tower, pass the turn. It's good that we drew Karn, because then we have something to play directly on 3. Opponent is going to Spreading Seas. I could Warping Whale just to play Karn next turn. I think this is actually okay. It sucks, but not the end of the world. Opponent plays Flooded Strand. Warping Whale, make a token. Untap. We draw Power Plant. Play Power Plant. Play Karn. Opponent fetches with Flooded Strand. Gets a Raugrin Triome. Man, what do we need versus Control? We might just have to go for the coding play. Alright, pass the turn. So the hand got a little bit dicier, but, you know, what can you do? Opponent shocks Hollowed Fountain, so they're leaving up double Counterspell, Cryptic Command, whole bunch of stuff. Alright. Start with Power Plant. Play Coding. Archmage's Charm, they're going to counter. Okay. So let's go get Sundering Titan. Put it in her hand. Play Chromatic Star. Sack it for green. And Abundant Harvest, naming land. Okay, we get a redundant tower, which is excellent. I technically misordered that. I should have cracked the star. Actually, I don't think I could have. Never mind. Okay, we draw Yavimaya. So, uptick Karn. Play tower. Pass the turn. Opponent can make a 1/1 or maybe cycle a Shark Typhoon. They cycle a Shark Typhoon. Okay, they get a 3/3. And they untap. They play a Plains. They go to combat. They're going to attack Karn. That's fine. Activate map. Get Urza's Mine. We untap. We draw Chromatic Sphere. So, play Urza's Mine. We have 12 mana, which unfortunately is not super useful for us. So we're going to lead on Chromatic Sphere. I'm going to wait to play Sundering Titan until after we play Yavimaya. Sack Sphere for green. Play Sphere. Sack Sphere for green. We get an Ugin. So, play Ugin. Leaving up Warping Whale, I guess. We don't have it, but we're faking that we do. Okay, opponent Archmage's Charms. Pass the turn. Opponent cycles another Shark Typhoon, gets a 1/1, draws a card. They untap. They play a Hall of Storm Giants. Attack us for 4, we take 4. We untap, we draw a Chromatic Sphere. So play Yavimaya, play Sundering Titan. Probably not going to resolve, but if it does, it's probably game. Okay, opponent Fact or Fiction. We'll split like this. Okay, opponent takes the 3 spells. Sundering Titan enters the battlefield. We'll take out Hall of the Storm Giants, Island, Plains, Mountain. And we can do this because Yavimaya making everything a forest. Play Chromatic Sphere. Oh my gosh, hang on a second. I need to make sure that there's not water coming into the basement here. My opponent also just messaged me. Opponent says cool. Yo, that's crazy. It's actually hailing right now. Alright, pass the turn. So when my opponent goes to remove Sundering Titan, which they're gonna have to, we're gonna take out all their lands again. Okay, they hit us for 4. This is fine. We go to 12. I wonder if that rain is coming through on the recording, because that's insane. Opponent plays Chalice on 1, that's fine. That just locks them off path, I think. So we untap. We draw Sylvan Scrying. Sack Star. Let's draw a card. We get an All Is Dust. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cast All Is Dust. And we're doing this to preserve Ugin, because I'm pretty sure our opponent is forced to counter that. Okay. So we go to combat. Attack for 7. Opponent no blocks. They go to 10. So we can Sylvan Scrying, get a tower, play the tower, then play Karn, and this is when it leaves the battlefield. I think the correct play here is to actually downtick on our own Sundering Titan, because then we can get rid of Plains, Island, Forest. And like, we lose Karn, but unless my opponent has another counterspell and dedicates all their resources attacking Karn this turn, we can just play Ugin and then wipe the board. So they kill Karn, hit us for 1. It's not often you Karn your own Sundering Titan. Opponent plays a Misty, we untap. We draw an Urza's Mine. So might as well play it to get as much mana as possible. Play Wormcoil. Okay, did not draw counter. Play an Ugin. -2 Ugin. Pass the turn. I think playing out Chalice was incorrect. Like, it would have been good if we had like a bunch of spheres and stars in hand, and it was bad because we had a bunch of threats. But I think it locks our opponent off of cycling through their own deck and their own answers against us. And I think what that means is our opponent should not have done it. Now, opponent knows their deck better than I do. They play it a lot more than I do, and they're going to know their exact list a lot more. Us getting game 1 is also pretty huge. So we're going to bring in the artifact and enchantment removal. We're going to bring in Emrakul. And I think we're just going to cut the Abundant Harvests. It's good. It's not amazing. And I think All Is Dust can come out, and 1 Warping Whale. We'll try it like this. Okay, this is not a good opener, so we're going to mulligan. Wow, alright, mulligan. Well, we've got 3 cantrips and a map. Sure. We'll put back Kozilek and a Sphere. Opponent is playing Spreading Seas, so we gotta pray to the Tron gods to give us Tron. Alright, opponent leads on island. We draw Wormcoil Engine. Play tower. Let's go for maximum greed here. If we draw a Tron land that isn't tower, we're gonna have turn 3 Tron. Okay, opponent prismatic endings the map. That's fair. Oh my gosh, the thunder. We draw a second tower. Alright. Play Chromatic Star. I'm just gonna play out the cantrips here. It is unlikely my opponent is going to be able to, like, prismatic ending again. Or they're not going to be able to prismatic ending twice, and I don't think they'd want to. I think they would rather leave up counterspells. Alright. We draw Ancient Stirrings. Okay. Cycle Sphere for green. We draw a Forest. Ancient Stirrings. Alright, we get an Urza's Mine. Rest of the bottom. Play Urza's Mine. Pass the turn. Opponent cycles a Shark Typhoon to make a 1/1. Reasonable. Opponent attacks us for 1. We go to 19. We untap. We draw Chromatic Star. Alright, cycle for green. Get Karn liberated. Play Chromatic Star. Cycle for green. Get an Ulamog. Play a Forest. Pass the turn. So if we draw a Power Plant before our opponent disrupts our mana base, we will get an Ulamog. Okay, opponent Fact or Fiction. You can have Bribery or everything else. Because they get Bribery Emrakul. Opponent puts Bribery in the grave. I'm really surprised by that. I guess they could be worried about Warping Whale. Like, because if we have Warping Whale and they Bribery us, they would lose. Okay, that's bad. When it goes to combat, hits us for 1, they're going to discard due to hand size. They might have already had a Bribery in hand. I don't know how many they play out of the sideboard. Or they might be just thinking they need to, like, snap Bribery. They discard to Fairy. So they're unwilling to tap out, which tells me that they absolutely have a counterspell. We are now 2 cards off of Tron. But I think what that means is I probably need to get rid of Emrakul. Because if my opponent's playing to Fairy and Bribery, that means they can just flash in Bribery and take one of our gigantic creatures. It also means I probably need a fast Tron hand in order to win. Like, this card is so unfair. I have not seen somebody play Blue-White Control with Bribery in the sideboard for Tron in, I think, 7 years. It's been that long. Now, I know, like, for, like, FNM meta, local meta, that probably happens a lot more. But personally, on Moto, I have not seen that happen for years. And I know this because I played Blue-White Control way back in the day when that was, like, a common sideboard one-of. I'm going to go ahead and concede because this hand is not going to be an active to Fairy. It means I'm bringing Warping Whale back in, and I'm probably just going to drop this Wilt. Do I get rid of Emrakul? Because, like, Bribery for Kozilek, Bribery for Ulamog is, like, not terrible. Bribery for Emrakul definitely wins the game. Like, these we potentially can come back from. This one we can't. Like, maybe Kozilek's in that, too. Maybe I just drop these two to play, like, Abundant Harvest. Nah, because we can potentially Veil of Summer or Warping Whale to counter Bribery. As long as our opponent's not flashing it with Teferi, we should be okay. We'll have an opportunity to counter. This hand's risky. I'm going to 6. Oh my gosh, this is so much better. I'm going to keep, and I think I'm going to put back Ancient Stirrings. Force of Vigor, like, it's... I could have put back Expedition Map, but I think my opponent is going to lead on Prismatic Ending again. Force of Vigor is important if their way to disrupt us is Spreading Seas. Okay, opponent plays an island to lead on. We untap. We draw Chromatic Sphere. Play Tower. And maybe the second map, putting it back, would have been better, but if my opponent taps out for Spreading Seas, we do have an Expedition Map on curve. Okay, opponent plays Reflecting Pool into Chalice on 1. Let's go get Urza's Mine. Whoop, what did I do? Opponent sent me a message. Hang on. Oh, my opponent is upset because I'm not playing fast. Excuse me, sir, I have a massive storm going on outside and need to make sure that there wasn't anything happening in my house. Okay, let's nuke Reflecting Pool. There's no reason to be this salty. I know I get salty, but... So we untap. We draw a Wormcoil Engine. Let's go ahead and nuke Castle. Opponent cycles a Shark Typhoon, so that doesn't do anything. They basically need Force of Negation now. They don't have it. Take out their last land. Pass the turn. We untap and draw Ulamog. So... Uptick on our opponent's hand. I would be really annoyed if I lost power and... To somebody who's like this salty about me just playing Tron, a deck that they appear to be teched against at least somewhat, right? Play Wormcoil. He says weebs? Calling me a weeb? Oh my gosh. Opponent plays a tap land because he has no he has no islands. This was Glacial Fortress came in tapped. Alright. He scooped. Alright, I'll see you guys in round 4. Hopefully my power doesn't go out. Alright, we're on the draw for round 4, and I think that's a mulligan. This might work. It's a little bit sketch. We'll put back Ulamog. This opponent leads on island. Lots of blue decks today. We draw Karn. Play mine, play map. Pass the turn. They Thought Scour themselves, milling 2 polluted deltas. They untap. They play a Scalding Tarn. Crack Scalding Tarn. And they get a Blood Crypt. Okay, it's Grixis. They Thoughtseize us. Sure. Warping Whale's our only way to interact with the board. We have a lot of consistency tools otherwise. So whatever they take really depends on what they're holding. They take Karn. Okay. We untap. We draw Ulamog. Play Avimaya. And I think we just pass holding up Warping Whale. And map activation. Opponent plays an island. Then passes. So let's go get Power Plant. Opponent Thought Scours us. Oh, do they have Surgicals in the main deck? They milled a mine. We untap. We draw Chromatic Star. Play a Power Plant. Cast Scrying. Get a tower. And play Chromatic Star. Pass the turn. Opponent bolts our face. They untap. They shock a Watery Grave. They play Nicol Bolas, forcing us to discard. Discard Warping Whale. We untap. We draw Kozilek. Cast Ancient Stirrings. I guess All Is Dust is our answer to that Nicol Bolas. We'll take All Is Dust, rest of the bottom. I'm going to cycle this for a green just to see if we can't draw Karn. Making sure to tap correctly because of the multiple tap abilities. Alright. All Is Dust. Pray for no Force Negation, though they would basically be out of answers if that were the case. Opponent shocks the Steam Vents. They play Imrith, Desert Doom. Okay, we untap. We draw an Urza's Mine. And there's the 10th mana. So my opponent can draw a bunch of cards. Ward, I believe Ward is... Let me look up the exact version of Ward. Alright, because there's no reminder text on Imrith. Whenever a permanent with Ward becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter it unless they pay the additional cost. Okay, so if I cast Ulamog, I cannot target Imrith without the ability getting countered. So I think the plan here is to take my opponent off of red mana. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps and draws. So this looks like a Grixis Dragon control list. They might be playing like Counterspell, Silumgar, Scorn. That would be interesting. I think my opponent drew a card. No, they didn't draw a card off that attack. Now, they drew a card dealing damage, I see. Opponent scoops. Alright, so versus our opponent's control deck, we're going to bring in Veil. So opponent is probably playing Alpine Moon and Unmoored Ego versus our deck. So we will also need the Force and the Wilt. Let's go ahead and drop Abundant Harvest. And you know what, I'll bring in Emrakul. Unless they're playing Bribery too. I think All Is Dust is in general pretty bad against my opponent. I think Ugin does the job just fine. And I need to cut one card. It's probably a Wormcoil Engine. Run it like this. We've got to pray we can dodge Land Destruction Surgical, Mill Surgical, that sort of thing. This hand is pretty good. They choose to play first and they keep 7. Alright, yeah, we'll try this. If my opponent plays Alpine Moon, we can just cast Wilt. We draw Force. That also works. Lead on Power Plant map. Pass the turn. Opponent Inquisitions. Okay. So turn 1, that Inquisition, if they'd played an untap land, would have been pretty bad against us. They take Veil, and they play a Steam Vents tapped. We untap. Draw Chromatic Sphere. Play Power Plant. Play Sphere. Sack Sphere for green. Get an Ancient Stirrings. Hopefully we get a Tron land we don't have. We do not. We have to take the land here. Otherwise we'll be in trouble. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play an island. And they pass. We untap. We draw our other forest. That is not good. Play a forest. Pass the turn. So I'm probably going to go for an Urza's Mine off Expedition map here. Okay, opponent Archmage's Charm to draw cards. They untap. Play Polluted Delta. I could cycle Wilt. The concern with that is then they could just answer map. So let's go get mine. We untap. Draw Karn. Play a mine. Pass the turn. They Thought Scour us. They milled a tower. They have Surgical. What can I do about this? Can I do anything? Let's go ahead and cycle Wilt. Okay. This is pretty bad, but we're almost to the amount of mana where that missing Tron land is not going to matter. The problem is we're going to have a really tough time drawing the remainder of our lands because that just cut down the amount of cards, or the amount of lands total in our deck by a quarter. And more than that, actually, because we've drawn so many lands already. So the plus side is we should draw more relevant spells. The downside is we may not have the mana to cast them. That was a very, very lucky Thought Scour. They're going to Thought Scour me again. Okay. Put a Cracks Polluted Delta. Gets a Watery Grave tapped. They untap. Expressive Iteration. I am going to counter this. I could have made a mana off of Warping Whale to maybe accelerate into a Karn. We're going to have a very tough time winning. We draw an Ugin. Play a Mine. That does not allow me to cast Force this turn, but it stops my opponent from milling a Mine and surgicaling that one out of my hand. Opponent flashes in Brazen Borrower. They hit us for 3. We go to 17. We untap. We draw a Chromatic Sphere. Play the Forest. Play the Sphere. Sack the Sphere. Okay, we drew a land. Excellent. That means Karn next turn, which is probably just going to get counterspelled, but what can you do? Opponent opts. Opponent forces us to discard and does 2 damage to us. Discard Force. We don't want them to Surgical Karn because we're holding more than one. Inquisition, they whiff. But now our opponent knows we're holding more than one Karn. They go to combat, they hit us for 3, so we go to 12. They have a counterspell guaranteed because they didn't animate Tar Pit there. Play Karn. Okay, that's bad. Pass the turn, pray they don't have a Surgical for Karn, and we can try again next turn. Opponent plays a land. They fire up Tar Pit, they're going to hit us for 6 and take us to 6. Now the concern is we're going to die to Bolt if we answer only one thing, and we probably only can answer one thing. Okay, we draw Karn, Great Creator. And if I play Karn, Great Creator, I'm going to die to Tar Pit, because even if I go and get Ensnaring Bridge, opponent can probably destroy it, and I'll still have 3 cards in hand. Unless there's anything else that might matter. I could go get Ballista on 1 to answer Brazen Borrower, but that doesn't do a whole lot. I guess let's go for the threat that they could Surgical if they draw it. So we're going to take out Brazen Borrower, because our opponent then either needs a Bolt on top of Creeping Tar Pit, or like Bolt Snap Bolt. Neither of which is unreasonable for my opponent to have, but if they don't, and they just have the damage off of Tar Pit, they have to pay a bunch of mana to activate Tar Pit, and then they have to choose between hitting us and hitting Karn. Opponent goes to combat. Attacks us. Okay, we go to 3. We untap. We draw Ancient Stirrings. Ancient Stirrings. Guess we get a star. Rest of the bottom. Downtick Karn, answer Tar Pit. Play a star. Play Karn. Animate star. Put a Cracks Polluted Delta. Play a Sphere. Are they going to Archmage's Charm that Chromatic Star? Okay, we're just dead. Yeah, well, Surgical on a Tron land, but what didn't take us out of the game. Our opponent took forever to try and finish us off. That probably means we don't need the Force of Vigor and Wilt. I'm going to drop the Force of Vigor, keep the Wilt in, and bring in 2 Abundant Harvests. So if we get Alpine Mooned, we get Alpine Mooned, but we know our opponent's preferred way of interacting with us is going to be through Surgical. This hand is very slow. Well, they probably won't be able to Surgical Tower, but if they can, it's game over. You know what? Sure. Put back a Karn. Lead on Tower Star. Pass the turn. Opponent shocks a Steam Vents. We untap. We draw Forest. Cycle Star for green. We draw Abundant Harvest. Ancient Stirrings. There's the 4th tower, which really seems like a huge trap. So take a Sphere. Rest of the bottom. Play Tower. Play Sphere. Pass the turn. Opponent opts. They play a tap land. We untap. We draw Karn, Great Creator. Cycle Sphere for green. Ancient Stirrings. Take Expedition Map. Rest of the bottom. Play land. Abundant Harvest. Name land. Get a forest. Play a map. Pass the turn. They bolt us. They untap. Expressive iteration. So it looks like our opponent kept a pretty land-light hand. So they're probably just trying to dig for lands. They find a Watery Grave. They play it tapped. So we untap. We draw Power Plant. Play Power Plant. Play Karn. Wish with Karn. And we're going to go get Liquid Metal Coating. Pass the turn. They animate Creeping Tar Pit. They kill Karn. We untap. We draw Expedition Map. Crack the map. Get Urza's Mine. Play Urza's Mine. Play Karn. I could uptick on their hand, or I can attack their mana base. I think they kept a hand or a land-light hand, so I'm going to attack their mana base. And I'm going to play Expedition Map here. If they have a bolt, they have a bolt. Okay, they play Polluted Delta. Snapcaster Mage for Lightning Bolt. Bolting Karn Liberated. So we untap. I'm going to immediately map for Sanctum of Ugin on my upkeep, because I want to keep ensuring that I can continue to play threats. And if I can thin my deck, which does not have that many lands in it, in theory I'll draw something that is more relevant. We draw another Expedition Map. Well, it wasn't a land, technically. Opponent Surgical's Karn Liberated. They're going to see we have nothing. Okay, go to our main. Play Tower. Play Coding. Play Map. Crack Map. Yeah, I guess I'll get a redundant mine. Pass the turn. We have tons of mana. Opponent plays a Scalding Tarn, they crack it. 5 mana, they play Imarith. Attack us for 2. Come on, Ugin. That's what we need here. We could draw an Ugin, this game is over. Wormcoil Engine. Play Sanctum. Play Wormcoil Engine, which unfortunately does not trigger Sanctum. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They unsummon Wormcoil. Attack us for 7. We go to 8. They draw a card. We may not be able to resolve an Ugin now. Untap. We draw Kozilek. Cast Kozilek. Sack Sanctum. Go get Ulamog, but that might be too late. Draw some cards. Oh, I think we're dead. Yeah, we had to draw our last tower, I think. So I can get up to 7 mana. But the only thing I can actually do is cast Wormcoil or Ancient Stirrings. So I guess we Ancient Stirrings. Get a Power Plant. Rest of the bottom. Play the Power Plant. Play the Wormcoil and we're dead to Bolt. We're dead to an Unsummon. Well, no, we're not dead to an Unsummon, but we are dead to Bolt. Opponent untaps. They have an Unsummon. So they take us down to 1. We're dead to any burn spell. And opponent gets an additional draw, I think, to find one. Well, they have a Kolaghan's Command. Alright. Well. Unfortunate. That's a very interesting control deck. Generally, so if you're playing Surgical, you're wanting to play a bunch of Hand Hate. Because Hand Hate and Surgical is really, really good together. And generally, if you're playing a lot of Hand Hate in a control deck, you don't want to play a bunch of counter spells because they compete. Counterspells want to counterspells want to reactively answer things. Hand hate wants to proactively answer things. And so generally you only want to do one of those things or another because of your timing on mana, because of just the nature of how that works. And generally control decks want to be reactive. What's interesting is my opponent has several threats that they tap out for, including Nicol Bolas, including Imrith. And so in my opinion, I think the instant speed... They probably should just be playing like tap out control, basically, with maybe some instant speed answers for individual threats. But I'm not a control player. I'm not an expert. It's unfortunate that we lost there. That match was winnable. And I'll see you guys in round 5. One interesting thing I thought of, by the way, for last game is if we'd had kept Surgical Extraction in our deck, rather than cut it for Abundant Harvest, we could have surgicaled that land out of our grave in response to the surgical, and only taken the one out of the grave and left the others in our deck. Not sure if that's good, but it would have been an out that we didn't have access to this time. I will be keeping this natural Tron plus threat even on the draw. Unfortunately, we're not on the play, and we are against a Lurrus deck of some kind. So, Power Plant map, pass the turn. Opponent kept a 1-lander. Play an Urza's Mine, pass the turn. They draw. That's interesting. They discard to hand size Wishclaw Talisman. We draw Ugin, so play Karn. Wish. We'll get Trinisphere, and this game is over. Okay. Yeah, there's no way to come back from that, because even if they drew a land, they can't cast anything, and then we start blowing up a land every turn. So Lurrus, Wishclaw Talisman, Basic Swamp the deck. What the heck am I playing against? I suspect I'll need the Wilton Forces, and I probably need the Veils. So we're going to go ahead and drop Abundant Harvest, and probably Kozilek, maybe? It could be a weird mill deck. You know what? I'm going to leave Kozilek in, and I'm going to cut a Wormcoil Engine instead. I can always wish for Wormcoil if I absolutely need it, provided it's not hyper-aggressive aggro of some kind. All right, we'll keep. We're currently looking at a turn 4 Ugin. If we draw Mine, we're looking at a turn 4 Ulamog. Opponent did mulligan 2/6 and leads on a Watery Grave. They did not reveal Lurrus. That means they either sided in a permanent that was 3 CMC or higher. Wishclaw Talisman, interesting. We get Sylvan Scrying. I'm going to go ahead and just immediately tutor for Mine. Pass the turn. Lotus Field. Sacking their lands. Interesting. We draw Yavimaya. Play Karn. Nuke the Talisman. It's too dangerous to be left alive. I cannot answer that Lotus Field with anything I currently have. I'm going to cast a Serum Visions. Interesting. I don't have a way to remove Hexproof from my opponent's permanents, so that's a thing. Opponent is going to Twiddle our tower. Okay. We draw Karn. I think that seals it up, because I can just wish for Chalice on one, which my opponent's deck would have a very tough time beating. Uptick Karn, play other Karn, downtick, get Chalice, put Chalice on one, pass the turn. Okay. I did not know my opponent was Twiddlestorm, and I would not, from my opponent's original opener, have guessed that in a million years. But we did 3 and 2, which means we do get a treasure chest. Let's go ahead and open this treasure chest, and we get 15 play points and an Eidolon of Countless Battles. Kind of meh. So how was Abundant Harvest? Well, most of the time, naming land off Abundant Harvest is great. There were a couple of times where we got threats with it. A lot of the times, if you say non-land, you just end up getting an Expedition Map, Sphere Star, Warping Whale, Sylvan Scrying, All is Dust. You're like 50-50 if you name non-land to hit a threat or a consistency tool. And if you name land, you're like 80-20 to hit a Tron land, and maybe 50-50 to hit a Tron land you need. So is it bad? I don't think so. I don't think it's great either. I might want to cut an Abundant Harvest for either a Spatial Contortion. Well, I was going to say a Spatial Contortion, but I'm thinking the most creatures that we have to deal with that are 2 toughness or higher are creatures that interrupt our mana base, like Magus of the Moon, Fulminator Mage. Those are the things that are like, man, I wish I could have answered this with Warping Whale, right? Dismember, I still don't want to be playing in this deck. I think the aggressive decks are too aggressive for the life loss at the moment. But I'm not 100% on I want Warping Whale for. This is really kind of tough. I'm I'm thinking maybe we drop Abundant Harvest and we bring one Surgical back into the main deck, but I don't have a lot else to comment on right now. I don't have the money to be trying out like Endurance out of the sideboard or the remaining Force of Vigors. I can't afford them at the moment, so that's really the only change I can make right now, barring something else from happening. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you did, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined, and remember you can follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, though the last few times have been earlier than that. And yeah, hope to see you guys there, and hope you enjoyed. Bye! Hey, just wanted to give a shout out to my patrons for the month of August. You guys are wonderful, and I really appreciate your support. It's been helping me make a lot of good content. If you want your name to show up in this list, there's a link to my Patreon in the description down below if you want to support this channel. Thank you so much.